Hello, dear students. Welcome to week 2. I want to let you know that I know you're struggling, and I'm trying to work with you guys and deleting some material, exchanging also some material, and making it more compatible with American literature and more compatible with literature. So more literature, less history, hopefully, and more connected to your lives. So hopefully I will succeed in making you understand literature and work on it easily. So in week 2, we will focus on Puritanism, the Puritans, specifically in the South and the Middle colonies. Remember, guys, these are different colonies than the first colonies. We will discuss that. And then we will have an example, and we will have what is an American. We'll read it together. Then we will move to Native American literature, which preceded, in fact, the colonies and continues. And until now, we have many writers who try to express their literature, their background. And it's rare to find an author who wrote the real history or who is 100% Native American and a writer. We have two, in fact, in America only. And one of them, Sherman Alexie, who won many prizes and many awards. One example is at Navajo Monument Valley Tribal School. We'll discuss this one. And another simple one is I would steal horses. Also, I included another sample, which is a short, very, very short story. It was oral literature, generation after generation, told this story to their kids. And now finally, someone made it like a short story for kids with pictures. Assignments this week only participate in the learning engagement. Also, I changed that, I adjusted it. And the quiz, again, I worked on the quiz to adjust it and make it a little bit funny. And we will start working. In fact, you need to start preparing yourself for the essay. We're not starting it yet, we're just discussing it. So you can keep in mind that you need a topic. Whenever you feel a literary work that you like, immediately write down the name of the literary work and try to focus on the meaning, because you will compare it to another literary work. Sherman Alexie is a Native American, pure Native American, from both sides, mother and father, and from different tribes. Let's know just a little bit about him.
Sherman Alexie is one of the most widely read Native American writers of our time. His poetry, short stories, novels, and films masterfully depict the everyday lives of Native Americans. He was born October 7th, 1966, in Well-Pennant, Washington, on a Spokane Indian reservation. As an infant, he underwent a life-threatening brain surgery because he suffered from hydrocephalus, a building up of excess fluid in the brain that causes developmental and physical impairments. In his case, he suffered from seizures, yet he thrived as an individual advanced reader. He learned at a young age that he didn't want to live his entire life on a reservation. Ultimately, this led him to attend an all-white high school that was off the reservation, in which he was an honor student.
I wanted to know something. He didn't want to live as a Native American with his tribe because he wanted to live with white kids. That is common with some people because they feel inferior, feel discriminated against. So he wants to be on the other side. He doesn't want to have that feeling. He doesn't want to be the different one. So most colored people felt that feeling in some time whether it's in the past or even recently. So whenever you don't feel comfortable with your skin, you feel that minorities are treated differently, some people try to reject that background. However, later on, they come back to their roots, and we will see that in his
Vice
poem.
president and a star athlete. It was these experiences that became the foundation from which he wrote The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian in 2007, which won a National Book Award for Young Adult Literature. After graduating from high school, he attended Gonzaga University in Spokane for 2 years and ultimately earned his Bachelor's of Arts in American Studies from Washington State University in 1991. And it was at Washington State that he found his writer's voice. However, during his college years, he began to drink heavily. Shortly after graduating from college, he received the Washington State Arts Commission Poetry Fellowship and the National Endowment for the Arts Poetry Fellowship. Then, his career took off in 1992 with the publishing of his first 2 collections of poetry entitled I Would Steal Horses and The Business of Fancy Dancing. After the successful publication of these works, he found the strength to stop drinking. Alexei has won numerous awards for his literary works as well as his films. His last published work, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, published in 2017, is a response to his mother's passing. It is a raw memoir of his memories as a child in which he highlights the complicated relationship he had with his mother. It is a
I'm gonna stop here because we want to know only the part about his awards. So he won many awards, many prizes, because he represented his ancestries and he represented the daily life of a Native American. And one example is I Would Steal Horses. It's a short poem. For you, if there were any left, give a dozen of the best to your father, the auto mechanic in the small town where you were born. In fact, his father was a mechanic, auto mechanic, and he worked hard all his life and definitely lived very poor. And where he will die sometime by dark. I'm afraid of his hands, which have rebuilt more of the small parts of this world than I ever will. I would sign treaties for you, take every promise as the last lie, the last point after which we both refused the exact. I would wrap up both in old blankets, hold every disease tight against our skin. Notice the second part of the poem about the past, about the treaties and how they were deceived by the white man, and how they broke every promise and many lies. Also, he's mentioning that he would refuse it with his dad the same way, his dad's opinion, his dad's point of view. And the last point, notice here and try to get the meaning. I would rub up both in old blankets, hold every disease tight against our skin. What does it remind you? Blanket, disease in blankets. How is this associated with Native Americans? If you remember, the American soldiers, the American military, gave the Indians as gifts blankets specifically covered and polluted with chicken pox to eliminate them. And many tribes, in fact, died. Even one tribe, all elders died, all people died except few, very few children, who took them and made them live with the white community to change their language and their loyalty. The other work is at Navajo Monument Valley Tribal School by Sherman Alexie. And this one is simple. It represents simple life.
The football field rises.
Notice here this picture. It's a true picture, the real picture of the football field he was describing. It's in an area where kids, Native American kids, play football. And this is his school. In fact, it's called the Valley Tribal School, Monument Valley Tribal School. And this is the football field. He used to watch boys playing. So notice how he makes an association and a resemblance between boys and nature and boys and tribes and parents and their kids.
To meet the mesa, Indian boys gallop across the grass against the beginnings of their body. On those Saturday afternoons, unbroken horses gather to watch their sons growing larger in the small parts of the world. Everyone is the quarterback. There is no thin man in a big hat writing down all the names in 2 columns, winners and losers. This is the eternal football game, Indians versus Indians. All the skins in the wooden bleachers, fancy dancing. Stomping red dust straight down into nothing. Before the game is over, the 8th grade girls track team comes running, circling the field, their thin and brown legs echoing wild horses, wild horses, wild horses.
So let me go back. Boys are playing football. And this image, he depicts another image of horses. They are like horses. Now, the parents are the strong horses, unbroken horses. They still have their pride. Unbroken horses gather to watch. These are the parents. And then there is no thin man in big hat. In a big hat means the referee. No one cares for scores. It's about playing. It's about being together. Boys from one tribe against boys from another tribes. Indians versus Indians, all the skins in the wooden bleachers, fancy dancing. All the parents, all the colors, all minorities. So there is no difference. And then the girls comes running, circling the field. Let me bring it back. The 8th grade girls track team, they come running and they look like wild horses, beautiful wild horses. And notice he says they're thin and the brown legs echoing, wild horses, wild horses. Why he's saying brown legs? Because they are Native Americans. This is their color. And it's similar to the color of a wild horse, the brown, and you see spots on them. And they're making sound, legs echoing, rumbling like horses running. And that's it. This is the poem. I'm gonna escape, and now I'm gonna stop and share with you the colonies, a little bit more dry than this. Stop sharing. And now I will share. And I will go quickly on the Puritans. And slideshow. So Puritans and Puritanism, the middle and the southern colonies. What's the definition of Puritanism? A religious reform movement in the late 16th and 17th centuries that sought to purify, that's why they call them Puritanism. They wanted to purify the Church of England of remnants of the Roman Catholic popery that the Puritans claimed had been retained after the religious settlement reached early in the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. Notice here the idea. If you remember, Jamestown was the first English settlement. And these Puritans believed that this settlement that came before them, they were following the Roman Catholic and church, and they were taking their religion not seriously, and they are changing the real religion. So they wanted to rectify the religion. They wanted to purify the religion and make it pure by following some rules. One of them, believing that God is omnipotent and good. God can do anything and is responsible for everything. Also, they believe that individuals are innately evil unless you purify them, rectify them, correct them. Predestination, they believe that God decides who is saved and damned. So God is responsible for everything. If you're sick, it's God. If you are healthy, it's God. And God wants you to work hard, and that's it. The Bible is God's direct communication to the individual. So God doesn't need a medium in between, doesn't need the church, doesn't need a clergy to connect you to God. If you read the Bible, you can connect to God. God can listen to you and hear you. Also, they believe that there should be no ornamentation in churches or any colorful vestments or any decorations or any statues. So it has to be plain. Everything should be plain in their lives. These colorful clothes, colorful life, colorful church, gold ornaments, you don't need them. They believe that there should be no hierarchy in the church. And that reflects, in fact, on their relation with Queen Elizabeth I. They refused her, and they refused the Roman Church to govern them. Cultural and religious impact of the Puritans on American life today. I wanted to take a minute and think. If they want to have plain life, everything should be plain. You should not have colors. You should not have anything different. And you should believe that God is responsible for everything, and human beings are evil in nature unless we correct them and raise them on the Bible and its rules. What do you think their lives could be? And how did they affect our life today? Also, let me continue here to show you how this is related to our life. People should read the Bible for themselves, not to depend on a clergy or church to have it read to them. If you don't need the church to read, to explain, and to analyze the Bible for you, you have to be able to read the Bible by yourself. This is what they believed, right? So that resulted in the law, every man must be able to read. That encouraged reading, encouraged education, in fact. So people were able to read. Individuals are responsible for their communities and should be involved in public affairs. If they refuse the hierarchy of the church, they refused also the hierarchy and the Queen Elizabeth I. They believed that she corrupted or she allowed the colonies to be corrupted, specifically Jamestown. So they have to be involved in their public affairs. They get together, they decide what to do with critical situations or critical decisions. That means they are involved in politics, involved in their representation. And that's the beginning of voting. So if you don't want people to take decisions or to make decisions for you, you have to make your own decision. You have to vote. You have to start participating in this life, which creates the beginning or the seed of democracy. So you have 2 points here. Number one, every person should be able to read, so he or she can read the Bible, because they don't need someone in the church to read it for them. So that encouraged and increased education, right? Reading. I'm talking about education in the present day, then just reading. And on the other side, everyone should be responsible for himself or herself to be presented in the society, because they don't want that hierarchy. They don't want someone to speak for them, whether it's the church or the governor, the queen. So that increased reading and education, and that increased people feeling that they have to be responsible for themselves, participating in the public affairs and voting eventually. Not then, definitely not then. What do you think their attitude towards the Native Americans, towards the locals? When they came at the beginning, they needed them. They were so friends with them, and they had communication with them. They thought they can convert them to Christianity, and they kept a good relation at the beginning. And the natives at start, they trade with them. They show them how to grow the land, how to live your life, how to adjust, because it was really hard, how to adjust to this climate. It was very cold, very hard to live in that area. It wasn't easy. So they helped them. Later, Puritans considered them evil and started treating them really badly, and even hunting them whenever there was a problem or something scary for them. So at the beginning, they were so peaceful. Puritans in general were so peaceful, but they considered them at the end instruments for the devil. And then when you give someone the idea that you have to purify people, you will find always extremes. And that's the beginning of the witch hunt. Okay. And whenever there was a woman trying to talk, to speak up, they considered her a witch. The reason is only males were considered superior. Only men spoke up. Only men were responsible to take care of the family. So women had no voice. Any woman who tried to speak up, who tried to do something different, also who tried to have a relationship out of marriage, was considered a witch. And what do they do with the witches? Yes, they burned them. They killed many innocent women. So these are just dates. If we have an example of Wigglesworth Day of Doom, it's a very long poem and it's very gloomy. It's religious in nature. It's all about their deity, about their religion. And 1662, the Halfway Covenant, and in 1692, Salem witch trials began. This is the first trial in Salem. Also another poem, Samuel Sewell Apologies. You know what? I'm not going to show it to you because it will take a long time. So attend the class, please, with me. I will discuss these points also. We'll explain them more. Let me put you in the picture. Before Puritans came to the United States, then at the time America, and it was called the New England, there was another settlement, Jamestown, because Jamestown established in 1607, way before Puritans came. That was almost more than 20 years before them. All of them were English, came from England, but the Puritans came later. And when they came, they weren't friends with the settlers, Jamestown settlers. So Puritan migration, the first one started in 1620. That was the first ship. And most of you know Mayflower. So Mayflower, the ship, sets sail for the New World in 1620. And that was the first migration for Puritans. Then another migration, second wave, came in between 1630 and 1640. So more Puritans came to the area, which increased their effect and impact in America. Another example is Jonathan Edwards, The Great Awakening. And notice here, this is the cover. Angry God, sinners in the hands of an angry God. So God was angry for them, by Jonathan Edwards. You can watch it if you want on YouTube. It's available for you, and you can watch it also here if you click on this button in material, in your week 2 material. Also, What's an American is another work by St. John D. Crevecoeur. Everyman's Library, letters from an American farmer. It was supposed to be a letter from an American farmer about life in America. Before that, let me take you to the discussion before we end the class. In the discussion, I changed. Can you see my screen? Let me make sure you can see my screen. Share screen. So in week 2, I changed the learning engagement and I made it easier, and I gave you options. So you have 2 options. Option number 1, you can talk about Puritanism, focus on it. And the American literature includes the Puritan colonies. This is a passage you will read, focusing on the style and the text. In this case, I want you to focus more on the meaning. The Lord to me a shepherd is, one therefore shall not I. He in the folds of tender grass doth cause me down to lie. So read it, read the meaning of it. And then in your post, your first reply, define Puritanism. You will Google it, find it. Also, I have the definition for you. So I want you to use your own words. I don't want you to copy and paste. Just use your own words, define it. And then explain the meaning of this passage, how it's related to their lives. So if you keep reading, you notice that, so it's all about religion. And the last, notice the last line, and in the Lord's house I shall dwell as long as days shall be. That will summarize the idea for you. They will live in Lord's house. They will live in the church, or in this case, religious place. They are hardworking people. They live in God, within God, under the umbrella of God. So it's all about obeying God, obeying rules, working hard. This is their lives. This is what leads them to become who they are. Although they defended themselves, they said, no, we love life. In fact, all critics believe that they are harsh on themselves, harsh on their kids. You don't have to explain the meaning, the whole meaning. I wanted to get the idea of it. The idea is about living the religion. God decides for you. God creates the path of righteousness. The good and the bad are the ways, the paths are clear. So you should choose the good path, the righteous path, and you follow the God's word. Now, if you're not a believer, it doesn't matter. We are analyzing a text based on the society that believed in it and wrote many literary works based on it or to explain it. So they explain their life as living in righteousness, working hard, loving God, obeying God, worshiping God, and that's all. That's life for them. Okay. So how do you believe that their religion, their belief in their religion affected their view? How do they see life if they are living only under God and everything should be plain? What do you think their life is? I explained it to you. Their life is very plain. Their life is harsh. They work hard. There are no colors in their lives, or anything new is not welcomed. Okay, this is one choice. The other choice is Native American culture. Native American culture is known for its rich oral tradition. Instead of using written language to document their history, indigenous people simply relied on their verbal language to share their history, customs, rituals, and legends through their vivid narratives. These powerful tales are often told by the tribal elders to the younger generations. They relate their tribal history, and they also entertain and preserve their culture. View The Girl Who Loved with Wild Horses on YouTube video in week 2 modules. Then share your insight on how this simple story reflects the tribal life and community. Always focus on horses and nature. This is the core of the wildlife or tribal life. Let me take you there. Can you click on it? So it's under week 2. And you will watch the video.
The Girl Who Loved Wild Horses. The Girl Who Loved Wild Horses. Story and illustrations by Paul Goebel.
So this was oral literature, and now it's written for children.
The people were always moving from place to place, following the herds of buffalo. They had many horses to carry the teepees and all their belongings. They trained their fastest horses to hunt the buffalo. There was a girl in the village who loved horses. She would often get up at daybreak when the birds were singing about the rising sun. She led the horses to drink at the river. She spoke softly, and they followed. People noticed that she understood horses in a very special way. She knew which grass they liked best and where to find them shelter from the winter blizzards. If a horse was hurt, she looked after it. Every day, when she helped her mother carry water and collect firewood, she would run off to be with the horses. She stayed with them in the meadows, but was careful never to go beyond sight of home. One hot day when the sun was overhead, she felt sleepy. She spread her blanket and lay down. It was nice to hear the horses eating and moving slowly among the flowers. Soon, she fell asleep. A faint rumble of distant thunder did not awaken her. Angry clouds began to roll out across the sky with lightning flashing in the darkness beneath. But the fresh breeze and scent of rain made her sleep soundly. Suddenly, there was a flash of lightning, a crash and rumbling which shook the earth. The girl leapt to her feet in fright. Everything was awake. Horses were rearing up on their hind legs and snorting in terror. She grabbed a horse's mane and jumped on his back. In an instant, the herd was galloping away like the wind. She called to the horses to stop, but her voice was lost in the thunder. Nothing could stop them. She hugged her horse's neck with her fingers twisted into his mane. She clung on, afraid of falling under the drumming hooves.
And you will continue the story. That was part 1. So continue. It's very short. Okay, beautiful story. So this is from the oral literature, generation after generation, and now it's made a short story for children. So I want you to explain how this story related to the tribal life. Focus on horses, focus on the girl who can understand horses, can speak to them, the connection between animals and Native Americans. Although they hunt them, they are the source of their food, they are the source of their transportation and source of friendship. So an animal is the source of food, friendship, and transportation. They respected them. They never killed any animal unless they want to eat that animal. If you watch the movie Avatar, notice how the resemblance between Avatar, the movie, and Native Americans. And let me check if we covered everything. This is the last point I want you to understand. Let's go back. This is related to the colonies. We had different colonies. You have to understand, they lived differently. They had different lives and they had different representations. We had 4 types, 4 main areas in literature. So let me read this for you. The period between 1600s and the mid 1700s, during this time, the landscape shapes into distinct areas and colonies, each with their own personality, politics, and literature. This can be divided broadly into 4 main areas. 4 main areas, people who lived in New England, okay? And we have examples, people who wrote either poems or short stories. William Bradford, we have Thomas Morton, who is very famous, and John Winthrop, and we have Michael Wigglesworth. Also, we have the middle colonies. We have John Woolman, Saint Jean de Grivecourt. Then we have the southern colonies, William Byrd and John Smith. We discussed John Smith last week, and he wrote the letter to Queen Anne. The Native American tribal areas, A Tale of the Sky World. Also, we have Indian Neighbors. These are examples. They were written then. A Tale of the Sky World, this is a famous speech, in fact, by the head of the tribe. But for you, you have 2 examples. In fact, you have 3 now. I Would Steal Horses, and then the tribal school, and the last one for the discussion is Let me go back to the discussion. The girl who loved wild horses for your discussion. I want you to start focusing on one literary work or two, because you will compare two literary works. You will choose two works, either a poem or a short story, or a short story with a short story, or two poems, and discuss the similarities and contrasts between them. We're not starting yet. Next week, I will show you how to write a critical essay and how to work on this essay, how to analyze, what to analyze exactly. I'll give you choices and give you also a checklist. You can focus on either on the theme. You will choose a 3 or 4. I will decide that next week. So you can focus on the theme, plot, characters, and for example, the settings, or you can focus on different aspect. So you will choose 2 literary works. If you like something this week, keep it, make sure you understand it, discuss it, and you can ask me questions. For the reading and learning engagement, if you feel this passage is hard, you want to have another passage from the same era, I don't mind, but believe me, this is the easiest one. I chose the easiest one and the shortest one. Instead of reading the whole Doomsday, I think it's 20 pages, if not more. So that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. Please take the quiz after you watch this recording. And I highly recommend attending the class with me, because we discuss the ideas more in depth and I can answer your questions. You can start working on any assignment. One more thing, guys, I extended the date, and instead of also Thursday, I'm going to make it Friday. So the first post will be on Friday. Okay, good luck.